It is worth saying, though, that your opinion on this matter, Mr. Rex, is worth listening to because you come to the table with a lot of experience and a lot of expertise. And as you can see, our criteria for measuring these scopes is pretty damn rigid. So coming to the top of the tier with Tier 1 is Schmidt Bender still...
Okay, we got some cliffhanger people there. They're wondering about their Schmidt Bender. They're worrying because I was about to say something about Schmidt Bender.
Yeah. And
then I went on that bunny trail, see.
So where do they still sit on your list?
Okay, Schmidt Bender PM2. That's the world standard for tactical rifle scopes. That's what everyone has been using. U.S. military had a contract made up for those in... I want to say recent years, okay? I think the U.S. Marine Corps was actually using them on some of their rifles. But recently, and this is how things evolve sometimes, that there's been some quality control issues in the last 3 years, and this is 2016. And there was talk around the campfire, and I don't know if this is true or not, so don't take my word on it, but they lost their military contract until they get their stuff straightened out. So Schmidt Bender was always solidly on the upper Tier 1 category in terms of this application. My Schmidt Bender's, 10, 12 years old now. So it was one of the good ones. And you know when you're laying behind it, everything about it is right. So Schmidt Bender PM2s are awesome. And even still with the quality control issues, and that's the thing with quality control too, is you might land on a really good one, and you usually will, especially on a high-grade optic. You spend a lot of money, you spend $2 or $3 grand on a scope or $4 grand on a rifle scope, it'll usually be pretty awesome. But your quality control part of the equation means that, okay, you had one that wasn't awesome mixed in there, and that's not cool because you can't just pick it up and trust it. You have to vet the scope then. Mm-hmm. You have to make it prove its worth in the real world, and most people don't have time for that, you know what I'm saying? So in terms of losing their AAA rating, if you want to put it that way, in respect for people, there was a question mark, and there was a failure someplace in the quality control, and I wouldn't say they lost their AAA rating, but they did get some questions from some serious people who I know, who do some of the testing and use these things for serious applications.
Interesting stuff.
So Schmidt Bender is still, I would say, Schmidt Bender PM2s are Tier 1 scopes. I would call them a mid Tier 1 or upper Tier 1. Especially if you get an older one, they're in upper Tier 1. The newer ones are probably fine. You just need to vet it carefully. That means you need to mechanically inspect everything and make sure it's working fine. And if it's not, you'll know. Just run it through its tests. You'll be fine. And if you got a bad one, I'm sure they have pretty good. I actually broke mine a long time ago. I froze it and broke it.
You froze your scope?
Yeah, I froze it. It gets pretty cold in some of the places where I operate. At times, it was 20 below, and it was wet, and it froze. And I was trying to adjust the variable setting, and it actually came undone on the inside, and it just went to straw vision. So you adjust the magnification, and it turns on a little straw. I sent it back to Germany, and they sent it right back to me. It was all pretty quick time, so they got good customer service, at least when I did it a few years ago. So Schmidt Bender PM2s are still rocking it, but just be advised, if you get a newer one, to check it out carefully if you're going to use it for a serious application.
So quality of workmanship and quality control is what it comes down to there.
And the reason that Schmidt Bender, those German scopes, when you're talking about the European tactical scopes, they're done very well. And a lot of people accused them of being over-engineered in the past. It's a more complicated mechanism of how they work. But the reason for the mechanism they use is to actually get the precision in their tracking. And what I'm talking about is when you adjust at 10 mils, there's different ways the geometry can be applied when you're adjusting something, in a mechanical, if you have leverage on something, right? It's going to move on a radius, and if you don't put the stuff in the right spot, it's not going to, in terms of angle measurements, right? It's not going to come out to be exactly precise all the time. So it has to be designed properly. And it can be close, but no cigar. But Schmidt Bender always got it right. So when you adjust it 12.1 mils, it is 12.1. You can actually verify that. And some other scope designs, there's design flaws inherent in the design itself, not necessarily in the construction of the scope, because they might be constructed and the quality might be great, but the design is flawed in other scopes. So Schmidt Bender is always well respected because they designed them properly and their tracking is spot on. It's very good. And that goes to show too, when you're talking about Schmidt Bender PM2s, also the high-end tactical Zeiss scopes. I'm talking about the $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000 scopes. Those are all good. The Steiners, are also very, very good. The new generation military Steiner scopes, they have kind of the same situation going on. They have very, very good tracking, and they're clearly in the tier 1 category. I really like the Steiner scopes, how they're set up. I think that that's a good value even too, because they're still just trying to get off the ground here. And Steiner's a good job, and that's something I would not be shy to buy. The high-end Swarovski tactical scopes, the Kales, like the K624i, those are really good. And there's another scope that some people claim to be in the tier 1 category, and that'd be March Optics. They're a pricey scope. They're in that same price range, $3-4 grand for a scope, but they're really designed for different application. In my opinion, they're kind of more of a target shooting scope, just the way they're configured. They have a lot of them have 1/8 minute of angle adjustments, and that's great for target shooting applications, but for certain tactical applications, is too fine of an increment, in my opinion. When you're clicking it, you don't need to be doing 10,000 clicks to get to where you need to go. You just need to get to the point. So sometimes more crude adjustment increments are totally adequate for shooting a Homo sapien. Okay, and that's what a tactical application would be. You don't need to, if you're shooting the head off a prairie dog at 900 yards, or you're going to try to, or if you're aiming for a bullseye and you're getting graded on it, then a scope like a March scope would be fantastic for that. But for tactical applications, I don't even think it really should be in the category, although it would be a tier 1 scope in terms of target scopes. So a lot of these scopes, you just got to remember the application, like we said before.
Just how many bells and whistles it comes with, too.
Right, right.
And there's one other, I know you're pretty intimate with this brand as well, the Valdadas.
Well, they range all over the category, too. And you got to remember, when we're talking about brand names, there's different lines within those brands, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And there's different designs within brands. So like a certain brand name, like a car, right? Ford makes everything from some really awesome cars to some really crappy cars. Like I would not want to own a 91 Ford Taurus. I mean, maybe they're a great car, but like they seem to break. At least my sister's broke a lot. And I don't want to get sued by Ford, so that's my opinion, okay? But you can statistically look at the consumer reports and find out which ones are more reliable, right? And that's true here too. So you're talking about brand names. It's, you can't just trust a brand. You have to look at the specific model and its track record and its design, okay?
Absolutely.
So with IOR Valdada, okay, IOR scopes are made in Romania, and they have a giant variety of different stuff they produced over time. They're one of the old optics manufacturers. So they produce stuff that's in the lower tier 1. IOR has produced stuff that's like in the military grade, like lower tier 3, like in terms of optical clarity. Like some of their like East Bloc military scopes are really, really crude. They're usually rugged. So in terms of ruggedness and heavy dutiness, they might be a tier 2 or tier 1, some of those cheaper scopes. But they also have a new line of new generation, like high-end scopes too. And those are in the tier 1 category. So you have to look at a lot of these. Some of these different brands, specifically IOR, have a wide variety of things they produce. So not all IORs are created equal, in my opinion. You're talking about the new generation 40 millimeter tube scopes or the 35 millimeter tube scopes, the ones that you're going to pay $2,000 or more for, and especially the newer ones. Their technology is really catching up. They got some good engineers for them now, and they're heads and shoulders above what they used to be, even back when I still liked them a while ago, because they were very, very rugged. And I like a robust design that's heavy, that weighs a lot, that you can pound nails into a board with, and it's not going to break. But now they've actually become more of a refined optic, and the new stuff is worth looking at too. So I used to put IOR, their top end, their good quality tactical scopes in the upper tier 2 level, which is really, really good. An upper tier 2 level scope is really good. But now these new ones, they're into that same category as Schmidt Bender, in my opinion.
So they've surpassed their own benchmark then, and they're into new territory. I know last time we were talking about the Valdadas, you mentioned the glass quality was so much improved.
Yeah, they've really come a long ways, and they've gotten some of the glass. There's a place in Germany, Shot Glass. They make most of the glass in that area, so they're using Shot Glass now. And it's just really good stuff. Their lens coating technology and their polishing technology has come a long ways. And I was actually surprised because I've used a lot of their stuff from the early 90s. And that stuff was pretty good, when you compare it to like what American standard benchmark has been, like the Leupold M1s or the M3As, the military scopes that was produced by our own company over here. And I was expecting to get that same category, like a mid-tier 2 level, but the new stuff is Schmidt Bender quality. Yep, it's good.
One other brand that folks might be wondering about is Nightforce.
Yeah, Nightforce is one of those scopes that, and I don't want to get in trouble here, but I was never super excited about it. For the longest time, all I've had a chance to use was the NXS, and they're a good scope. A lot of really, really respectable people swear by them, and they're a good scope. However, the optical quality of the NXS scopes was not such that I was very impressed, but I'm used to the European glass too. So I had maybe spoiled myself on that. And the NXS, they're not as hefty. They don't feel as hefty to me. When you're working the turrets and stuff, they don't seem like they have the same level of ruggedness that you would have in some of your high-end military-grade European optics. However, they do have a couple out now that are relatively new, and I say relatively because this stuff, it's evolving so fast. But the Nightforce BEAST and the the ATACR, we were calling it earlier, but the ATACR, those are both, they're like higher grade scopes, and those I would put those into that tier 1 category as well. Those are really solid optics. I had a chance to talk to some other serious guys who are very well informed in this topic, and they told me that I need to readjust my attitude on Nightforce, because secretly people who know me know what my secret attitudes are. I don't say this stuff on my channel because I don't like making people feel bad. I was never a fan of Nightforce, but the BEAST and the ATACR are actually really good, according to some very well-respected people that I do trust. So they're done correctly, and the secret with those optics is that they have very good quality control. Everything's hand-fitted. Well, it's all tested. Let's put it like that. When they put the parts together, they're using a lot of the same style parts as you would get in your standard American rifle scope. That's why they might have felt a little bit, maybe lightweight to me, because they just have the same feel as those other scopes. But the trick is they make sure that everything fits together properly and works out mathematically to make a good scope that adjusts properly. Everything is actually verified and tested. Normally when they make like a production run scope, they just throw all the parts together out of the boxes and then they just ship it. And that's actually, that's how it is, right?
No testing at all.
So a huge part of the cost of a Nightforce, especially these really good ones like the BEAST and the other one I mentioned, is the quality control and the time of the actual experts to go in there and verify everything's working. So if you buy a Nightforce scope, the good thing about it is you know that the quality control is good. Everything in that scope is working fine. And they are a rugged optic, and the tracking is good on them. And that's what a lot of professionals use. Chris Kyle used a Nightforce, and he's kind of like a stud in the craft. A lot of people really respect his opinion because he did so well with what he had to do. So I'm not talking smack about him, but to be honest, they're a good, respectable scope company. So that's the story on Nightforce, is in terms of their tier 1 lineup.
Some pretty kind words from Rex there for a guy who a little bit ago didn't even like Nightforce. Yeah,
and it's not that I didn't like him, but sometimes it's funny because people have an attitude about him. It's like, it seems to me, it's funny, I don't know, everyone probably has this in a different category, but when you're talking about brand names, people automatically think that if they buy the most expensive scope laying at the sporting goods store, that they're set, they're good. And when a guy sees a lot of that attitude, there's like this subconscious like frustration that builds up. And I'm sure that affected my thinking, so it got me knocked off my normal scientific methodology there, see? So there's a little bit, and I have that with other brands too, and I'll admit it. There's certain brands to where like people, if it don't have a gold ring on it, ain't nothing. Talking about loophole.
Exactly.
And because it was the most expensive scope for a long time at the A's hardware store, for all these cowboys who are elk hunting. And I'm not trying to be mean, but no, seriously, right? And so they think that because it's the most expensive one from the place they know where to buy stuff from, that it's the best.
It's confirmation bias is what it is.
It's confirmation bias, and that's fine.
And we all bring that to the table every day,
right.
From what we eat for breakfast to where we go for dinner at night, everything in between. We always bring our human experience to it. And like we disclaimed at the beginning of this segment, these are just our opinions, ladies and gentlemen, just our opinions. But that's pretty much the tier 1 then. You've got your Schmidt Bender, of course.
Yeah, pretty much your European military-grade optics. That's what's in the tier 1. And even some of the Eastern European stuff like Valdada's higher-end stuff, and the Nightforce, which is kind of an American company. A lot of the Nightforces are made actually in Japan, but I do believe the Beast and the ATACR, I think those are assembled in America, if I'm not mistaken. So they have because they have higher quality control demands
and tested rigorously.
Now that's just me going off of memory. You guys can verify that or whatever. But
so that brings us to the second tier of long-range tactical scopes.